Thank you, Mr. President. As the senator from the state of Maryland, I am so proud to represent so many Marylanders who are federal workers dedicated to helping their fellow citizens with the essential work that they provide. So I come to the floor today to speak about the threat Project 2025 poses to our federal workforce and to our nation. This is a plan that, if enacted, would take America back to some of the darkest chapters in our history. From a nationwide abortion ban to eliminating civil rights for millions of Americans, to gutting the checks and balances enshrined in our Constitution by the Founding Fathers, and putting unlimited power in the President's hands. Mr. President, this kind of extremism is deeply disturbing. As the senator from Maryland and chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, I want to focus on one particular reason I think these ideas are so dangerous. That is the way Project 2025 targets nonpartisan public servants in the federal government. In the state of Maryland alone, there are over 150,000 federal employees serving our country and their fellow Americans. They are dedicated and they believe in public service, and they have always played important roles. Repatriating stranded Americans who were stuck overseas when COVID-19 hit. Leading negotiations to get the release of wrongfully detained Americans in Russia and Venezuela. Coordinating the resettlement of Afghan refugees who supported our mission for over 2 decades. Global drug prevention efforts, hurricane response training, emergency food assistance, counterterrorism. In every region of the globe and every state of our nation, public servants, our civil servants, put the principles over politics in order to serve their fellow citizens. So, Mr. President, that is why we need to be clear-eyed about Project 25 will mean not only to our federal workforce, but to our national security. Project 2025 is a blueprint for a government that is so radical and disturbing, even Donald Trump himself doesn't want to take credit for it. He said, quote, "I have no idea who's behind it." Well, despite the fact that 6 of his former cabinet secretaries helped write it, and let me quote from the president of the Heritage Foundation, the think tank organizing the project, when he said about the federal workforce, people will lose their jobs. Talk about an understatement. Project 25 envisions federal employees who will be politically loyal to an individual and a cult of personality rather than loyal to the Constitution and the letter of the law. Our federal workforce are career diplomats, career servants, career people trying to serve their fellow citizens. We do not want to politicize our civil workforce. As the chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, I must tell you this is the kind of thing authoritarian governments do. Project 2025 will weaken our country, and at a place the United States has not seen before. Now, these ideas aren't exactly new. There's a long track record of smearing federal employees as being part of the deep state. Back in 2020, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee produced a staff report detailing the concerning efforts of the last administration had on the State Department, on its morale, and on its trying to affect its professionalism. A culture of fear and mistrust, vacant positions, nominees with extreme views and concerning records. Unfortunately, that seems to be a glimpse of what could lie ahead with Project 2025. The president of the American Federation of Government Employees said, and I quote, "Project 2025 will take away freedoms and rights from every American, will hurt the middle class and working families, and is a threat to our democracy." They want to gut federal workers' pay and benefits. They want to eliminate millions of federal jobs. They want to make it easier to discriminate against people of color, women, and LGBTQ people. From the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to Veterans Administration to the Environmental Protection Agency. They want to make big changes. They want to dismantle support for public education. They want to eliminate the entirety of the Department of Homeland Security. These are extreme ideas. I believe these ideas are incredibly dangerous, and we must do everything we can to support our public servants. That is why I applaud the Biden-Harris administration and the Office of Personnel Management for issuing a rule in opposition to the previous administration's Schedule F classification. I've also co-sponsored legislation with Senator Kaine to codify the same effort. As a longtime member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and now its chair, I've been working to strengthen its workforce at the State Department, USAID, and other international affairs agencies, from making sure our personnel have the ability to compete globally, to increasing recruitment and retention. That should be our focus. Let's make our civil service more competitive with the best, most innovative people leading our national security, diplomacy, and federal agencies, not by dismantling them. At the time of its implementation more than a century ago, our merit-based civil service was an anti-corruption initiative. President Teddy Roosevelt, who is known as the father of the modern civil service, wrote that its importance lies in the fact that it is the most powerful implement with which we to work for the moral regeneration of our public life. No other force so strongly tends to increase the political weight of decent citizens. That was the motivation behind the civil service, and it's more important today than ever. So, Mr. President, I agree our federal work employees are a tremendous force of good for our community. We don't acknowledge them enough on this floor. We don't do enough to help them and to support them and give them the resources they need. We certainly don't want to make it more difficult for people to serve our country. That is why we must say no to targeting of American public servants for doing their job. No to loyalty tests, no to bypassing congressional oversight, no to taking our country backwards to a time before there were civil rights and reproductive rights, and no to weakening our democratic institutions. With that, Mr. President, I yield the floor.